You can see things that have gone wrong, but lost opportunities are like invisible. But when I think about MDMA having been criminalized in 1985 by the DEA on an emergency basis for bogus reasons about neurotoxicity, but they used that as a rationale. Then the hearings that we had going on with the DEA administrative law judge, they said that it should stay as a medicine. And the DEA overruled them, and we sued them twice in the appeals courts and won. And on the third time, DEA lawyers figured out how to satisfy the courts to keep it illegal. And that's why, again, in '86, I started MAPS to go through the FDA. But that when I think of the number of suicides that have happened in both veteran communities and everywhere since 1985, hundreds and hundreds of thousands, I think, of lives.
We should talk about this while we're being brought up, because there's a common misconception about MDMA that has been proven to be false, and it was that it makes holes in your brain. Well, yes, yeah. Oprah is a big person responsible for that, actually. There was. It started on MTV and went to Oprah. This is around 2001. So what had happened was that there was a young woman who her mother worked at a drug abuse treatment center, and she had problems with cocaine. She had problems with marijuana. She had problems with ecstasy, other things. And so they arranged, and this was for this MTV show, that this woman would go and do a brain scan, a SPECT scan, which is blood flow in the brain, and then they would reveal the results to her live on TV. And this was at this drug abuse treatment center that her mother worked at, and they revealed the results, and the results showed these holes in the brain. And it was a graphically manipulated image. So SPECT scans show blood flow through the brain, and there's certain areas that light up when you have more blood flow than others. And so they took an arbitrary cutoff. Any place that had lower than a certain amount of blood flow, they showed as a hole. And it was just complete propaganda. It was to scare this young woman to supposedly do it. She'd done all these other drugs and ecstasy anyway. So short time after that, Oprah decides that she's going to do a show, and she contacts me and us because we are now advocates, and she knew about what we're doing, and we're trying to start MDMA research. She says her team says that they want to do 2 shows on ecstasy. It's such a big thing. They want to do one on the risks and one on the benefits. I'm like, great, sounds great. And they say, well, we're going to do the one on the risks first. And they brought this woman who had all these holes in the brain, supposedly, to be on the show. If you had all the holes in the brain that they showed, you wouldn't be walking and talking. It was just big holes in her brain. So nobody seemed to put it together. Here, this woman, she seems fine, but this is her damaged brain. And we told Oprah's team, don't show this. This is fake. This is not real. And they did it anyway. And they had one woman who was a 24-year-old woman that was a raver, but she had positive experiences about MDMA. So they said, okay, she would be the one that would sort of say something positive about MDMA. And then Oprah said to her, do you know what you might be doing to your brain with all these holes in the brain? We'd like to offer you a brain scan. And if your brain scan looked like hers, would you, I think it was Lynn Smith was her name that had the holes in the brain, would you stop using if your brain looked like that? And she said, well, I'd be willing to do a brain scan. But the very next day she contacted MAPS. She contacted us and said that should she do this brain scan? And I said, you definitely should do it, but do it with different people. Don't do it with the people that they're, but definitely do this brain scan, and then you'll be on the show again, and you can show what the results are. So she did the brain scan, and then she wrote me back, and she said, well, no holes, and they've canceled the next show. There's no show on the benefits, and they're not bringing me back. And I'm like, they tricked you.
They did. And then years...
normal Hollywood producer shit.
It was just, and yeah, no show on the benefits. But then years later, over a decade later, when Oprah was just a short time from closing her show, but she had O Magazine. So she decided she would do a story on, she would assign a senior editor to do a story on MDMA and the therapeutic use. And it was like Oprah doing atonement. I said, would you be willing, though, to do another show on your TV show and bring this woman back who had all these holes in the brain, and let's see what she's doing now? And she actually
did show some signs of brain damage in that she was working for the Partnership for a Drug-Free America. And she was as the exhibit of, MDMA is terrible.
So do you think they scared her with the holes in the brain to the point where she thought that drugs were ruining her life and she wanted to save other people?
I think there was that, yeah, and I think that she wanted to get back in the good graces with her mother, and that then she gets supported, and then she gets a job, and this whole thing. And so Oprah said, no, she's not willing to do another show, but this article would go forward in O Magazine. And the article was great, and the woman who was the reporter ended up going for an underground MDMA experience, which I helped arrange, and it was very successful, and that's how the article ends. But it's great because it didn't make a big deal of, this is illegal underground. It was just like, here's what happened to her, to MDMA. Mm-hmm. But it was, in some ways, propaganda in the positive way. It was like, can a single pill save your life?
Right.
Before it's like, this is going to cause holes in your brain. Now, one pill is all you need, a magic pill, and then you're going to be better for everything. Ignores the whole point that it's about the therapy and the context and the relationship.
It seems like, unfortunately, because of those kind of television shows and because of up until podcasts and the internet, you had a limited sort of ability to fully express the pros and the cons and explain the nuance of what these experiences are about. And you're instead dealing with this sensationalist perspective where they're just trying to, highlight whatever the most the wildest aspects of the experience, pro or con, would be, so they can get a lot of people to pay attention to it. It's like it becomes prostituted.
Yeah. And I think the long form podcasts where you can have the whole story. Mm-hmm. You can get the whole story out unedited by people that are wanting to do it.